Good morning, guys. It's Coddle here. This is the second part of your POE, the briefing on the second part. Just for interest's sake, I have released the first part and the mocks. I can't remember exactly, but nobody had a total disaster. I think the lowest marks were like very high 40s, just below 50. And those guys would see I made some comments. There's some of you that missed the question completely or got the question completely wrong. And that happens when you, and this is in general, I'm now talking about part 2 already. This happens if you don't look at your curriculum. So when we deal with the questions now, for example, question 1 deals with the 6 steps in the scientific process, and I think it's page 74 in your textbook. If you go and Google the 6 steps in the scientific process, you might find a completely different process, and you try to answer from there, it will be wrong. So please, guys, always work from your textbook to the assignment and then to the other sources. So what you're wanting to do is you want your curriculum to guide you for an answer, and once the curriculum has guided you to an answer, you can then use that answer, the skeleton of that answer that the curriculum gives you, to look for other sources and build it out, so that you use multiple sources so that you can show you've done wider reading. Some of the folks that didn't do that well would have 3 sources, for example. Then you're not going to do well. The other interesting thing, of course, is not using the curriculum is the guys that have used AI. I think there's 3 or 4 people that I had to report, unfortunately, again. But those guys, in many cases, got the questions completely wrong. Because if you go to AI and you haven't looked at your textbook and you're using AI to answer, AI is going to give you an answer that's not always aligned with the curriculum. And then you are going to get bad marks if your marks stand, if you don't just get a 0 because you've used AI and you didn't declare it correctly, etc. So guys, please always, and even just listening to this will tell you what to do, right? And the approach to follow. I understand that some of you may not have the textbook and you're relying on ARC and you're relying on these sessions, but if you just listen to what I say, so I've already said, like, that thing is on page, I think it's 74. I'm not out with more than 5 pages, so it's somewhere 74, 72, something like that. But I'm going to go through those steps now. So follow those steps, and you can't go wrong. But okay, so here we go. So let's have a look at it. So this is part 2. This is 30% of the overall marks for the year. It's due on the 9th of October, so we've got 3 weeks about to go. But check the PAS. PASs do change. It was right this morning when I checked it, but yeah. We look at learning units 3 and 4. This is 2,000 to 2,500 words. I think this is very tight. I think you're really going to have have to have your wits about you. If you're giving proper answers, you are going to have to write decently, but you are in the final year, and we expect you to, at this point, to be able to write decently. I reckon you need at least 10 sources. If you look at the NQF level this is at, if you look at what we are asking you to do, then I feel 10 sources are not too much to ask. And then if you are using AI, in this one, there's not much to use AI for, but you need to do an AI declaration. I get concerned, and I did subtract marks for some people when I don't see an AI declaration. And obviously, for example, in the last one, you may have designed the logo with AI. You need to be really artistic if you're just going to design the label or the logo from your head, and then there's no AI declaration. Then I start asking questions. Also, if you reference AI, so you say Notebook LM or ChatGPT or whatever as a reference, which is correct, you should do that, but then you've got no declaration, which means you've used AI, but you didn't declare it. Those folks I didn't report. but I did take marks for that because that's the instruction. So please, guys, AI declarations. And then the other thing is go make sure how to do the AI declaration. If you don't know how to do it, send the library an email and say to them, my lecturer is being really strict on this. How am I supposed to do the AI declaration? And they'll show you. So we're still busy dealing with the blue sky ideas that you had from the first assignment. So you're going to build further on that idea. We are now looking at a report that we're talking to investors about, and you are use the feedback from the first one and the marks from the first one. And guys, if you say, but I don't know, you didn't write any feedback. The rubric is feedback, and the rubric is attached. Go look at the rubric, see where you lost marks. Go read what the actual rubric in the assignment says. That in itself is your feedback. Okay, so question 1. Run an experiment to test the value of your blue sky venture using the scientific method. So those are the 6 steps that is on page 70, whatever it is. Ask questions, carry out background research, develop a hypothesis, test the hypothesis by running experiments, analyze the data, and assess the results. So ask yourself lots of questions so that you understand what are the questions that you want answered, right? Carry out background research around the project and around what you're going to do. And a lot of that you've actually done in the first assessment. Now develop a hypothesis, right? And here they're asking you to look at the value of your blue sky venture. So in other words, my take on this is it going to be something that you can do? And is it something that's sustainable and it will make money in the long? So you're basically testing the viability and reliability, viability, yeah, and viability and I'll get the other word now. To see can it be done, and to will it work. It's not reliability, the other one. I can't get the word now. But in any case, but it's the first one, the viability means can you implement it? Is it possible to do? And the second one means if you have implemented, will you make money? Those are the 2 things that we're looking at. And for me, because they're talking about value, it's more about the second one. So will it make money? Is it possible? So develop a hypothesis around that. Then you've got to run an experiment, right? Now, an experiment in this case, the easiest way to do this is do a survey. Do an actual survey, right? Don't talk about how you're going to do the survey. You must do an actual survey. In other words, speak to some people around you. It's fine to use family. You don't and keep them anonymous. Don't tell me who you spoke to. Family, friends, whatever. Ask them a couple of questions. I would say 5, 6 questions, no more than 10 people. 10 people are a lot, right? So gather some data, analyze those data, and then assess the result. Now, let me move to the next slide because I've broken it down further there. So what are we going to do? We're going to create a hypothesis. So first thing is you're going to create a hypothesis. And for me, look, your hypothesis can be anything. It's up to you. But for me, your hypothesis should speak to the easiest way. Let me put it that way. You can do it any way you want to, but your hypothesis for me is speak to what value does it add, speak to how does the what you're doing contribute to the customers' lives. That's where I'll go to. So now, how will you collect data? So you'll collect data from less than 10 people. The easiest for me is do a questionnaire. Or if you want to ask them questions. Remember now, this is not qualitative, this is quantitative research, right? Because we're going to draw graphs. So I'm assuming that many of you have done the research module already, so you should know exactly what the difference is between quantitative and qualitative. So quantitative, you're not asking people's opinions and their feelings, you're asking them yes, no, and Likert scale type of questions. Now you take those results, the data that you've gathered, you put them into a table, put them into an Excel spreadsheet, and now you draw some graphs from there. I'm going to tell you now, I know some of you are not that au fait with Excel. I'll give you a freebie. Look for bricks as in the things that we build buildings with, bricks. It's an AI that you tell it what you want it to do, and it does it. It's an Excel AI, right? So it's a spreadsheet AI. So you put numbers in there and you tell it, draw me a graph, a bar graph of this. Tell me how does this relate to that, and it does it. Okay. And there's a good way to use AI in this. There's no problem in using AI if you declare it, reference it and declare it. But for those of you that know you can't work Excel well, try bricks. As I said, bricks as in building bricks, BRICKS, bricks. I think it's bricks.ai, but I'm not sure if it's .ai. But bricks, if you say bricks Excel AI or something like that in Google, you'll quickly find it. So now you've got these graphs and tables and things. You made a very pretty thing for me. Now you must tell me what do these results mean? You must interpret the results. So what does this mean for your business in terms of the possibility of starting and sustaining this business? Make a conclusion on your hypothesis. Either prove your hypothesis true or false, and then what are you going to do now? What does this tell you about your business? So that question is 40 marks. Question 2 asks about the funding of your business. Will you crowdfund or bootstrap? Right? So here you should do a theoretical start. And as I mentioned right at the beginning, start with Nick and Murray. Talk about what they say about crowdfunding and bootstrapping, and now go find other sources about crowdfunding and bootstrapping, right? And so write a short introduction to the question, where you talk about that you have a choice between bootstrapping and crowdfunding. You have decided to make the choice to do crowdfunding or bootstrapping, whatever you do. Now you've got to answer the question, why did you make that choice, right? Motivate this according to the theory that you have from Nick and Murray, as well as the other sources. How much money will you need? You need to start talking money now, and you need to put numbers down. So now if you think about the first assignment, and I'm not trying to embarrass somebody, one person said that the target is 63 million people. That's the population of South Africa. That's not really a market segment or something. So you might want to revisit that if that is what you said. And now you've got to look at how big is the market, how much money will you do? Are you going to target the market in the whole country and the whole world at one go? Or are you starting to target in a specific area, in a specific region? So you've got to now start talking numbers and break down a number. And I'm not going to say you need to give a full budget, but you need to give a reasonable idea, an account of how are you going to be spending the money, what are you going to be spending money on, and how much money is that going to cost? And that needs to be realistic. And then we need a timeline. You need to start talking about when do you need this money, and what are you going to do with this money? This is also a 40-mark question. So we've got 40-40. So each one of these two questions account 40% of the overall assignment. So it's a big chunk of the assignment. You can't get away with a half a page on these things, guys. So question 3 is a difficult question. It's thankfully only 10 marks, but it is a difficult question because it asks you to do some self-reflection. It asks you to write a 10-mark answer on what are the limitations and problems and disadvantages that you experience in writing part 1 and part 2. What were the challenges that you experienced, and how did they or how did they influence your objectivity or the validity of what you've written? And if you've got to do this assignment again, and I hope none of you have to, these two assignments, what would you do differently in the future? How would you different approach, and were there any ethical considerations that you had to face? This is you talking about how you experienced. As long as you give a relatively fair and a relatively what sounds like an honest narration of your feelings around this, you should get a decent mark for this. Put some effort in, and I can tell you now, this tends to be a difficult question. Students normally struggle with this because you've got to look at what you did and how you thought about things and how you approach something, and that's not always the easiest to do. Excuse me. Okay, so that's question 3. That's 10 marks, and here's the overall layout. So you do a cover page and an introduction. Now, many of you have put in an index for me and saying question 1 is on page this for the first one. That's great, but it's useless if you don't have page numbers. So think about that. Many of you put them in, but there's no page numbers. So you need to number your pages. So an introduction of 250 to 300 words, giving an overview of what you're going to do. Question 1 is 40 marks. I would say 850 to 900 words, maybe 1,000 words. The first one won't be as long because you're going to have graphs and stuff in there. Question 2 would be 40 marks. That's going to be a longer one. 850 to 900 words. I would think between 1 and 2 will be longer than 1. And then question 3 is about 10 marks for about 200 words. That's your self-reflection. And then a conclusion again, 250 to 300 words. If you count all the upper counts of these, you'll see that you're actually over the word count. If you count the lower counts, you're far under the word count. So it's just to give you a sense of how much you need to write. I'll probably typically find that for question 1 and 2, students are closer to 1,000 words, and the introduction and the conclusion is closer to 150 words. But this is broken down according to what they've said in the assignment, as well as how the marks work out. Then your reference list. If you need to understand how to reference, guys, please. You end of 3rd year, you need to reference properly. I am absolutely ruthless and I take marks like nothing for wrong referencing. Sorry, you're not first year students. First year I've got sympathy. We follow a developmental approach. I'm sorry if the lecturers that you had previously didn't do that for you. But at this stage, if you're not sure how to reference, contact the library, ask them to help you get your references correctly. And I'll talk about that again, the appendices and AI declaration, some of you will use that. In the appendices also, it's a very clever idea to take your question 1 questions, and instead of, remember, you're going to do a questionnaire with people or ask people questions, and instead of including those questions in question 1, refer to questions that I've asked and put them in the appendix. Then they're not part of your word count, right? So if I want to go look at the questions you asked, I can go look at the appendix, but it doesn't muck around with your word count. And then there's 10 marks for layout, language, headings, and so on. I want to come back to the references. References need to be academic in nature. Indeed is not academic in nature. If you can't, the easy way to look at this is, if you find a website or something and you can't tell me who wrote that, staff writer is not academic, right? So if you could tell me the person, Peter Jones, wrote that. If you can't tell me that, it's not academic. Your in-text referencing must be correct and your references must be correct. AI declaration must be correct. It is not good enough simply to put ChatGPT as a reference and that's it. You need to do an AI declaration. If you give me an AI declaration and you give me a link to chat and I click on that link and I can't get to your chat, sorry, you're going to lose marks. The people that have done this the best is people that have gone and said, okay, let me have a look at my what I've spoken to chat about and I'll put screenshots in. Then I can see what you've chatted about and I can see how you've used chat and that's fine. But folks, don't slip up on that. And unfortunately, don't let me catch you using AI, as I have now a couple of people, and they've not declared it, not referenced it, not declared it. They say they haven't used AI at all. And there's clear evidence that they have used AI. So please, guys, let's not go there. Okay. Difficulty of this assignment, I don't think it's immensely difficult. it takes a bit of thinking, and it takes a bit of putting stuff together. Don't wait until, I think it's due, I said the 9th, don't wait until the 8th before you start working on it. You need to, as always, put a bit of work in. Remember, the level is much higher than what it was previously. So yeah, the 9th I see is on a Thursday. So yeah, we've got about 3 weeks to go before we get to that. So start putting some work in there. As always, please feel free to send me an email. Just can I also ask that if you do send me an email, please on the subject line, always put what subject this is. Entrepreneurship 3B, ENTP 7312, as I recall. Just simply because I get emails from students saying, so I'm not sure if in question 2, do I need to do X, Y, and Z? I'm dealing with a couple of classes that all have a question 2. Now I've got to try to figure out who you are and where you fit in. Just make my life easy, please, and just put this in the subject line. Just put the what the subject is that you're asking the question on. There's my email address, guys. Please feel free to drop me a line, ask me questions, and so on. And I look forward to your assignments. As I said, the first one's marks and everything has been released, so you're welcome to go look at it. Okay, guys. Cheers. Speak soon.